Chapter 25. I kept slipping in and out of consciousness, but whenever I was awake, I heard a deafening roar. It sounded like a hurricane. I saw large waves every now and then, and felt water splash on my face. I had no idea where I was or what was going on, but it didn't seem good.
"We're almost to the hot tub,"
a familiar voice said. Was that Shay? I felt like I was being carried, and it hurt being jostled around so much, but I kept blacking out. Blacking out was awesome. When I woke up again, I saw Rockney's house. I closed my eyes again. When I opened them, I was being lowered into a hot tub. The bubbling blue water looked so pretty. My head went under the surface, and I closed my eyes again. More pain. My whole body was burning. I suddenly remembered jumping into Rockney's fire. Why did I do that? Why would I do something that would cause this much pain? After some time, the pain went away. My skin went from burning to itching and then numb. I opened my eyes underwater and saw that my arms were pink. I had a vague memory of them being red. No, not just red. I had seen the insides of my arms because the skin had been burned away. I lunged out of the tub, gasping. The first person I saw was Champagne. She had tears in her eyes. Next to her were Victor, Astrid, Shay, Anila, and Estevan. And, oh man, what was going on around us? I saw giant waves crashing down on the mountains far away. There was water in the yard, and the wind blew so hard I had to brace myself in the tub.
"Rockney's magic is gone,"
Victor shouted over the wind.
"The island isn't exactly in a prime location for this time of year."
"Isn't there something we can do?" I yelled back.
"I can,"
Estevan said in a voice that wasn't his. It was Nauki's. He turned and walked away toward the street. I jumped out of the tub and followed. Estevan stood in the middle of the street, waving his arms around. I noticed for the first time the clouds were red. They swirled to Estevan's movements, and then he pushed his arms outward, and the clouds did the same. That stopped the wind and rain, but not the waves, which were roaring toward us. Estevan braced himself and held up his hands in front of him. Just before the water reached the gatehouse, it stopped. It was like it hit an invisible solid wall. It was an amazing sight. The water rushed around the invisible barrier that circled us, and we were surrounded. We stood in the street for at least a minute as the waves died down on the shore and the water washed back into the sea. It was just like the dream I'd had. The bells must have given me a vision of the future when they touched my face. Estevan dropped his arms and turned to me. "You need a human host to walk on land," I remembered. I felt a hand on my shoulder and saw Astrid smiling at me. The potion had worn off.
"My dear Astrid,"
Estevan said, and I had to remind myself it was Nauki speaking.
"All my life,"
she said,
"Rockney convinced me you were evil. I could have known you all these years."
She shook her head, and for a second I thought she was going to cry, but she didn't.
"We still have time to make up for all that was lost," he said, taking her hand.
Despite the show we just witnessed with the weather, I was glad Rockney's magic was gone from this island. If it hadn't disappeared, Estevan would have started melting the way Trick had when Nauki possessed him. But there my friend stood, unharmed and happier than I'd seen him, even if it was Nauki's smile I saw. "Is there any way you can get your power back and lift Astrid's curse?" I asked. "They're the same thing, aren't they? That's why she turns old during the day, right?" He nodded.
"I could easily extract it from Shay, since she was the one to which I hurled the curse. But with Astrid, it's part of her being. She was born with it. I don't know if I can remove it without killing her."
I suddenly thought of how Rockney's potion had worn off when the vampire attacked me. Could you extract the curse from me? I asked Naoki. He looked at me through narrow eyes.
Perhaps, but you're not cursed.
I told him what happened earlier, and how I thought I could leech the curse out of Astrid with my power, the way the vampire leached the potion from me. Naoki looked worried.
That sounds dangerous. It could kill her.
Not if she's standing in the hot tub.
I'm willing to try it,
Astrid said, hopeful. Naoki looked from her to me, and then he smiled.
I guess it's worth a shot.
Astrid stepped into the hot tub, and I stood directly in front of her. We stared into each other's eyes, and I could tell she was as nervous as me. We joined hands as Naoki stepped up next to me. Are you ready? I asked her.
Yes.
I looked at Naoki. You?
Yes.
Okay, I said, taking a deep breath. I'd never leeched anyone without being close to death, but I tried anyway. I had to learn to control my power once and for all. Perhaps I could keep from using it even if I was dying. If it was my time to go, it was my time. I couldn't continue to take other people's lives, even by accident.
Oh,
Astrid gasped. It had begun. Okay, I said, trying to comfort her. It's okay. I won't hurt you. Astrid's eyes grew wide and her face paled. The green in her eyes even lost some color. I hated seeing her this way and worried I wasn't doing it correctly. My body grew numb and I started gasping as well. I couldn't breathe. It's okay, I managed to say once again. It was one of the most difficult things I'd done. I was so weak. I could barely even stand anymore. After a moment, it was done. Astrid stood in the hot tub, the color returning to her skin and eyes. I, on the other hand, still felt weak. Naoki walked up to me and placed his hand on my forehead. I saw cyan-colored energy being extracted from me. It looked like vapor and was actually quite pretty. Did it work? I asked.
Indeed, it did,
Naoki said. He helped me up. So Astrid's curse is lifted?
Yes. Thank you, Josh. You have righted many wrongs this day. I will never forget your bravery.
I smiled at that. Of all the wrongs I'd committed, it felt great knowing I'd helped.
I should return to my kingdom now,
Naoki said.
Be prepared to catch your friend. He may collapse once I leave him.
Okay. And then Esteban suddenly collapsed. I'm embarrassed to say I just missed catching him, but I wasn't going to tell him that. Ready to go home? I asked him.
Hell yeah,
he said, but not heatedly.
Are you going back too?
Astrid asked me. I noticed immediately that it was daytime and she was still her young self. I didn't know what to say. Rockney was gone, and Naoki was no longer a threat. The island was unified once more, and the village didn't seem to need guards anymore. Yes, I finally said. I should go back to my home. She nodded sadly.
We'll miss you, Josh. I'll miss you.
Feel free to come back any time, Sugar Wolf,
Champagne said.
I might even be able to teach you how to control your power.
Really? I said, hopeful. Even though I'd managed to control my power in order to help Astrid, it was incredibly difficult. Any help was completely welcome. She shrugged.
Well, anything's possible.
I smiled and hugged her. Victor gave me a bone-crunching hug, and I tried to return it, but wasn't nearly strong enough. He laughed at my attempt.
Thank you, Josh,
Anila said then.
For everything.
I nodded. Then Esteban and I rode a cart to the train station. Luckily, the train still seemed in working order, despite my crashing it earlier. We took the 5-minute trip back to Dallas, but instead of following Esteban onto the platform, I stood on the train, staring at the myriad city people. Everyone seemed oblivious to us, just going about their lives like nothing bad had ever happened. It was calming. Esteban stared at me for a second, then said,
"You're going back, aren't you?"
I just stared at him with a grin. He already knew my answer. This has been Dargo Island, the first tale, written and read by Jerry Hart.